Welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits, and to the fruit basket, which is looking rather forlorn, a little bit like me. Did I tell you that I took receipt of an antique chandelier a few months ago and it arrived broken? I might have done. That's become a metaphor for how I feel. I think when I pen my memoir, I shall call it The Broken Chandelier. Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit sorry for myself, which I know is not dignified, but one can't help it at times. I tend to drown in despair and pity for a little while, just to get it out of the way, and then I feel better. I've had a dreadful week, a dreadful couple of weeks. I'm sorry that I wasn't here to broadcast over the state visit, which I was so looking forward to. I was so looking forward to September, one of my favourite months along with October, but it's been a complete disaster. We will be focusing on the events of the state visit so that I can catch up with you and all of that gossip during this broadcast. So if you don't wish to hear me droning on about the calamities that have befallen me and the literal crack in the fruit basket above me, then I shall furnish the description box with a timestamp. I'm also going to be having quite harsh and frosty words with a basketeer who made a comment, I'm afraid, that I have to address. The impertinence. But for those of you who want to shoot the breeze for a bit and hear about my miseries, because misery loves company, doesn't it? And nothing cheers one up than hearing a little bit of misery from someone else and the travails that they're going through. So that might delight some of you to hang around with me while we catch up for the first few minutes on this. On this subject, I told you, you might recall that less than a year ago I moved to this new home, this new location, with the desire to have it renovated and brought up to scratch. And I told you that beyond what you see in the fruit bowl, when I look around, it looks more like a crack den at the moment, some sort of bare wood-floored dwelling place, because the carpets are up, everything was ready for the beginning of the renovation works that I've got to undertake. Last Monday and Tuesday, I had the electrician in who was fabulous. Isn't it wonderful when you find good trade, when you find a masterful tradesperson? And he and his apprentice were wonderful, did a wonderful job over 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, taking out all of the old and ancient socketry, rewiring the entire place almost, and establishing new sockets all over the place, and the light fittings moved and repositioned. So all of that 2 days of constant drilling and headaches, and it wasn't pleasant at all, but they did the job well. At the same time, in tandem, I was installing acoustic improvements to a room above this room, actually there's 2 rooms above this room, but one in particular I had insulation installed in there, as well as matte vinyl, heavy loaded matte vinyl, whatever it is, to help with the airborne sounds between floors. At great expense, one might add, 4 figures, but had to be done. And just a matter of a couple of days after that was installed successfully, there sprang a leak. Not under my watch, not with me at fault. I'll say no more. Actually, not anybody's fault. These are ancient buildings. I'm dramatising there. Not ancient. I suppose this is the 1890s built this place, but old enough to have this sort of trouble in old buildings. If you live in one, you'll know. But a leak caused carnage above me, and what was an old hairline fissure became a crack, and the crack began to widen and to make all these scary noises, and before I knew it, Geronimo! The ceiling caved in. And I'll flash up images of it. Yes, I happened to capture it, and it was late at night when it came in, and I had a feeling in the last few moments that it was gonna go. So luckily enough, I was fortunate to place out my yoga mats, which are rather chunky affairs, yoga mats and a few old duvets, to capture all the debris. There are about 3 or 4 bin bags full of debris. It's astonishing what comes down. Well, of course, the thing is, you see, it's an old type of, the old format of the way that they did ceilings and floors, Latham plaster or Latham plaster, which complicates things. It was a very effective method back in the day, but it complicates things with the repair of this sort of thing. And what complicates things on stilts in my situation is that all the insulation which went under and was installed just last week will be saturated and soaked. And it's very hard to reach and to hoover out. And one can't really leave wet insulation between floors. The mould, the spores, the wetness, the damage it can do structurally. So I must admit it's not what I needed at this moment in time to deal with this, and to find trades that you trust, because one will tell you need to replace the entire ceiling, one will tell you just patch it up, one will, they all tell you different things. It's hard to find a specialist at this moment in time. So that has not been fun. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. Actually, when the ceiling finally came down, it was actually a blessed and sweet relief, because there'd been so much going on here and around this home, in other people's homes, various works that had been disastrous. I don't know if Mercury's in retrograde or something in the stars, but I am trying desperately to take my own advice that I give you and channel the royal spirit, ground myself. It's not easy. It's not easy, but it does help to remind myself that this too shall pass. But the building's hemorrhaging, I'm hemorrhaging money on stilts, and I can't pretend that it's not really rather frightening and scary at this moment in time. And it's holding me up, it's holding the renovation up. It's not so easy to broadcast. I have to cobble together this husk of a set to come to you, and no doubt in the next couple of days it'll have to go, build it together, this sort of thing. So I can't bring a certain sense of quality to the occasion. But I'm sure, and actually I know, because you've told me when we've discussed home renovations and furnishings, that many of you face this kind of thing all the time. It's not unusual. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just my turn. It's just my turn to go through it. And actually I should at least be grateful that it didn't occur after I'd renovated, after I'd had the ceiling all done and my antique chandelier, which arrived to me broken, but I'm hoping to get fixed, and have that raised. And that'll be a symbolic moment when that chandelier is fixed and raised and in situ, and hopefully I'll be shining and sparkling back to my usual state. I'm living by lamplight, and well, I daren't use candlelight at the moment in case of misfortunes. I'm living by lamplight because all my ceiling lamps have been moved and under refitting, so they're not working. So everything has a sort of darkness about it at the moment, which isn't really giving me a great big boost. I haven't been able to sleep at all. I look like an absolute ghoul most of the time, especially when I haven't had sleep. So that's been quite scary for the neighbours. And one of the things I'm desperately lacking is space, which I always knew about this place. As I've told you before, this is a very small home. In fact, especially compared to American houses, you'd be astonished. You'd be astonished how small our dwelling places here are in the kingdom, and especially here in London if one's on a budget. When I moved here, I decided that I would sacrifice the opportunity for space, because there was opportunity if I'd moved further out to have a lot more space, or even out of London, a great deal more space. But I wanted this locale, that I love this area. Round about the confines, between Camden and Hampstead, Kentish Town, Tufnell Park, Dartmouth Park, all around that sort of area, my dear. I sacrificed space and other conveniences for the location that I love and for a period home with high ceilings. That's what I like. It's just a shame when they fall in, cave in on one. But I don't, I think this is true. I don't regret the sacrifice. I might have felt like I did many times during the past week. I don't regret my decision to move to this place. I made the right choice. None of the choices were perfect. The options, I don't have a grand fortune with which to hedge my bets on various properties. This was the right choice, but it would certainly be nice to be able to have more space to work and live more efficiently and peaceably. But that's a conundrum many of us face, isn't it, my dear? And also, especially for those of you abroad who might not understand property prices in the kingdom and in my area of London, to give you an idea of the prices involved, let's go with a decent one-bedroom flat, for example, in my area, which isn't the most highfalutin area of London whatsoever. We're not even talking of Belgravia or Hampstead. In a really rather ordinary area with nice parts and rough parts, a decent one-bedroom flat here begins around the £500,000 mark. You'd be lucky to find a decent one around the £500,000 mark, which is in dollars that would be almost $700,000. And these places I'm talking about are usually shoeboxes as well. You'd be astonished, especially those of you in America and abroad. The prices are insane here. Of course, the upside is that once you're on the ladder, then your property is a good investment. It will appreciate, and there is profit to be made from it. So all's well that ends well, one hopes, but it's always bittersweet, isn't it? Everything's always bittersweet in life. And I do believe actually that the contrast between the bitter and the sweet is important. It's enriching. And I think that it's our job to seek out more of the sweet side and relish that sweet side when it comes along, and to handle the bitter moments with grace. That is quite the challenge at times. Isn't it, my dear? Channel the royal spirit, channel the royal spirit. I have to keep chanting that mantra to myself. I just truly hope that the ongoing work doesn't interfere too much with the broadcasting, because this is the only space that I'm able to broadcast from. So who knows what's around the corner. And I expect someone, because I know how kind you all are, somebody will probably suggest that I organise a GoFundMe so that people can crowdfund and chip in and do that kind of thing. I wouldn't be completely against doing that sort of thing, but it does bring up complications, and sometimes people who can't afford to contribute will feel compelled that they have to contribute, which I don't like at all. And then others will contribute, and a few months down the line might decide they don't like me at all and wish that they had their money back. You see, there's always things around the corner that can complicate those sort of issues. So I'm not at this moment e-begging, but but I ain't too proud to beg if the time comes up and I need to. I might mention that, but not at this time. I won't be prostituting for the fruiting, should we put it that way. Our dear fruit basket is under attack from the elements, but I will make an exception for the exceedingly rich out there, because I happen to know, for example, that Saudi royalty watch the broadcast, and in fact, as I've rather indiscreetly told you before, a princess of Saudi Arabia connected to the Saudi embassy in America got in touch with me requesting a keepsake. And I'm not speaking about you specifically, my dear, but Saudi royalty, it's small change to them, isn't it, to chuck a few thousand my way. So if you happen to be watching, then feel free to visit my tip jar in the description box, my dear. This is your time to cough up. But as for the rest of you, no, I'm not asking for anything other than perhaps a cup of tea. All right. Well, let's see if I can do this, shall we? Let's see if I can snap myself out of the funk and return to the River broadcast. Let's turn to the state visit of the United States of America, hosted by their Majesties the King and Queen. A comment from CBTX. River, can't wait to see your breakdown of all the outfits. That's the most important thing, isn't it, my dear? Who cares about the rest and the diplomacy? When I saw Melania's yellow dress, I immediately thought, I wonder what River will think. Oh, I do like that, my dear. Thank you. Well, the First Lady's wardrobe, First Lady Melania, it gave us more to critique, didn't it, than what members of the royal family wore, because they all wore traditional, beautiful garments, but traditional, nothing too surprising, really. little in the way of whimsy, I would say, and surprise. But this yellow gown caused ripples of discussion, didn't it, my dear? It seems to be very polarising. Some love it, some hate it. Carolina Herrera it was, who we've discussed many times before on the broadcast, with that rich palette of New York juicy apple reds and apple greens, which I rather favour. But the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan, has done a great disservice to many times. But it exemplifies the spirit of America and the Big Apple. So I approve of the fact that Melania was wearing Carolina Herrera, and she paired it with this wide belt in lavender. And the trouble with it is, you see, is it struck me rather out of context. It was like an Easter egg arriving at the Thanksgiving table, do you understand? This was the thing that was unusual. It was a spring bouquet as we fall into winter, do you understand? However, we must consider two elements. Firstly, Melania represents America. She is not here to represent the kingdom. She is here representing her husband and her nation. And the United States don't have national dress in the same way that perhaps Japan has a national dress, or the saris of India, or the thobe and abaya of Saudi Arabia, unless you're expecting them to dress up as cowboys and Indians or something, or robe themselves in stars and stripes, this sort of thing, which wouldn't really do, would it? They don't really have that sort of national costume, is what it is. So they have the opportunity to play. And it captures something of the American spirit, this outfit. It truly does. Their adventurism, their boldness, their daring, and it's decidedly contemporary, isn't it? Which makes for an interesting contrast with royalty. Secondly, Melania is a stylist. She is keen to be a stylist of sorts, in the old-fashioned sense of the word, and everything that she wears is very much considered. And it emanates from a place of purpose and reason within her, and her own authentic love of fashion and style, and of statement. Yes, bold simplicity seems to be a hallmark of hers, with a touch of whimsy, and she isn't afraid to throw in an unconventional seasoning onto the meal, do you understand? And I thought actually this gown was beautifully cut. I will say that. I loved the tailoring. I wouldn't say the whole effect was completely my cup of tea, but so what? It was great tailoring, and I think that actually it compared quite favourably next to Queen Camilla, who looked splendid. The workmanship on the garment is gorgeous, but unfortunately she hasn't found the best cut for these sort of events, for these sort of frocks. She can work one of those beautiful tea dress summer frocks so beautifully, and it looks so wonderfully on her bosomy figure during the summer months, this kind of thing. She gets it right in so many ways, but never so keen unless you bring into account the French state visit where she wore the midnight blue and the cape. That was stunning. That was really stunning. This, not so much. Actually, as you know, we have a basketeer among us who is a legend of the fashion world, very much an unsung hero, Philip Waghorn, who designed for Lanvin, had a very personal relationship with the Lanvins, and went on to design for Nina Ricci. Philip comments a lot on the channel, I'm lucky enough to say, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion, Mr. Waghorn, my darling, of Melania's wardrobe, what you think. The president's fondness for makeup, because golly gee whiz, it always astonishes me the amount of pan stick that he slaps on. The president's maquillage is really quite something to behold, isn't it? That absolute tan of it, and I'm one that really resents people droning on and on about the orange man, you know. It's a very world-weary joke we all have heard a million times, isn't it, about his appearance. But I will say the one thing that actually I rather approve of is the fact that the president knows that people take the piss out of him for looking so orange all the time, like a great big satsuma. And what does he do in response? He camps it up to the nines even more. He becomes more orange and more tan, and there's even more of a tide mark around the face with sort of white goggle marks here and tide lines at the side. He does not care. He couldn't give a damn. He couldn't give a damn. He'll be as orange as a sunset, and everyone else will just have to lap it up. But it's quite astonishing. Now, Melania is 55 years old. President Trump turns 80 next year, I believe. Well, I will say that they don't look absurd together, whether you like or loathe them. I wouldn't say that they look absurd or ridiculous together. I think for coming up for 80 years old, he looks rather hale and hearty. And the king was a marvellous speaker during the speech segment. Marvellous speaker as usual, but too ploddy, too slow. He drags it on. And the unfortunate effect of that is that the humour is lost because any of the comic timing is dragged out far too slowly and loses any of its appeal. You know exactly what's round the corner. President Trump is much better at that, actually. I do understand that it is regal to speak slowly, but you still want to retain everybody's attention. And Donald spoke well, and he was very gracious, wasn't he? Very gracious. He walks in front of the king, as is de rigueur, just as he walked in front of the late Queen Elizabeth, as was de rigueur, as was absolutely right and correct. He was a guest, and I believe the king motioned him, go ahead, go to inspect the troops, exactly as is done. And Donald was absolutely effusive in his affection for the kingdom, and the kingdomers, and for the king and queen. I heard him call the king a great man, a fantastic king, a great king, fantastic people, beautiful Catherine, radiant Catherine, he said, was pouring compliments all over her. William, too, said brilliant, would go on to be a great leader. And he actually appeared genuinely humbled by his hosts and the reception he received, the great honours, and he appeared to be actually very impressed by the royal spirit, which is actually very cosy and familial. It's not grand or new money vulgar, do you understand? It's cosy, and you could tell that he found the charm there and saw the charm there. It was rather a joy, I must admit, to see him banging on about the omission of Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, who he claims that he banned from proceedings, which is quite delicious, because he is, in fact, a total sadist, that Khan, sadist Khan. We don't like him. And he referred to the Prime Minister and met with Keir Starmer. And it was interesting, wasn't it, because even though they differ politically, and Keir Starmer was so cringeworthily embarrassing to watch next to him. Awful statesman, dreadful leader, dire, very good operator. He's oiled his way into prime ministership, so one can't argue with the fact that he is an operator and that he is talented in that direction, with a bit of luck thrown into the mix as well. But did you notice Donald has a genuine affection for Keir Starmer, which will surprise some people. He said, we like each other. He said repeatedly that Keir Starmer is a very nice man, even though they're opposed on so many levels, with Keir Starmer recognising Palestine this week, Donald Trump not having the intention to do so. But he likes Keir Starmer. I wasn't surprised, and why wasn't I surprised? Well, if you've been keen-eared, you would have heard me say, going back years, my insight on Keir Starmer, which is that, he's dreadful in so many ways, but on a personal level can be and is very charming. And I tell you, not because I've heard, but because I know. I'm his neighbour. And have been literal neighbours with him, and the confines of Countess Road and the Pineapple Pub, his local, in the past. I don't wish to speak more on that subject. When I tell you, I know that he can be personable and a very nice man and very charming and once upon a time rather handsome. It is because I know as a fact. That doesn't mean that I'm impressed with his current machinations. But you see, if you doubt my insight, then you get egg on your face because President Trump confirmed what I told you. He has his charms, unbelievable as it might seem when he is acting like some sort of moronic, dense, nincompoop, div, and dipstick a total cretin, hell-bent on ruining this country and dragging it down. You might have noticed red collar and cuffs on the gentleman, on Charles and William. That is a traditional uniform, the traditional Windsor uniform. Isn't that lovely? It's only worn at the castle by British royal men. Catherine's gown, of course, was exquisite. Just so understatedly beautiful and elegant. One can't really say that doesn't take the crown, but it doesn't shout for it. Do you understand? It doesn't snatch the crown. It whispers. By Philippa Lepley the piece was. She wore it with Queen Mary's lover's not tiara, which for some reason bores me. I know it shouldn't, but it does. And she wore Queen Elizabeth's diamond orbital pendant earrings, and I enjoyed them. On her breast were 2 of the royal family orders and 1 of the Victorian orders, and the silk crepe gown was shrouded by a hand-embroidered gold lace evening coat featuring roses, with couched gold cording, punctuated with French knots and satin-stitched blooms. How could it fail? Now, turning back to the subject of President Trump, I'm afraid I'm going to have to deal with the comment that was left for me. Sometimes, as well as the beloved basketeers of this fruit basket, I really have to deal with some fruit cakes and some Fruit Loops in the background. They've been quiet for a while, I've got to tell you, but occasionally they'll come through. And Janie, I won't give out your full name, but Janie, I'm sure you're a lovely person in many respects, but you need to see a psychiatrist. I'm telling you this for your own good. You might recall, it was a long time ago now, my last broadcast, but I made a very innocuous comment, gently mocking Donald Trump. President Trump told us that he would end the Russia-Ukraine war on the first day of his presidency. So, by my watch, he's about 235 days overdue. We're still waiting, President Trump, but someone pipes up, don't they? And, I've often called out Trump derangement syndrome on here where I see it, completely irrational, overboard sort of Trump derangement syndrome. I've often defended Donald Trump where I felt it was necessary, but I am not an admirer of Donald Trump. I am not a shill or a sycophant or a great enthusiast of him or any other politician. I see the pros and cons of many of them, but I'm also not a sounding board. Do you understand, my dear? I am not a sounding board for these nutcases, these absolute nutcases and Fruit Loops who are sycophants and who are interminably, incessantly over-enthusiastic and get into the deification of people like politicians and a President Trump, the opposite of Trump derangement syndrome. I'll just read the highlights of this comment, but I'll throw the rest up on the screen. Janie said, "I am very distressed seeing on your broadcast that you made an uncharitable remark about President Trump. The implication was that he has not done enough to bring about peace." No, Janie dear, no, wash your ears out. There was no implication from me about anything. There was a sarcastic remark regarding the fact that your beloved President Trump campaigned on very easily having the war settled. They were his words. Actually, he said that he would settle the war even before he took office, before he even set foot in there. Before day one, he actually stated that he would have it settled within that day.
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It will be settled quickly. I will get it solved in rapid order, and it will take me no longer than one day. I know exactly what to say to each of them. I got along very well with them.
So I wasn't implying anything. I was calling out a fact. And just as I called out Joseph Robinette Biden during his administration for his mischief throughout and for his flatulence, I make no apology either for holding Donald Trump to account, and I'd wager that there are many Republican fruits who would agree with me and would think that that was absolutely fair critique. Not everybody has to be so polarised and insane that they can't see the light and shade. Janie, you're nuts. I've said it before and I will say it again. You're nuts. I wish the best for you, my dear. I say this with as much affection as I can muster, but either get off the meds or begin taking some. I'm not sure which it is. Or the CBD oil that I see you're promoting and hawking on your social medias. Yeah. Very much into your CBD oils and all of this thing for soothing the soul and your anxieties, for which I have every compassion for those going through mental miseries, but my compassion for all of that ends when you try and place it all upon my shoulders and take the time to write great big disparaging comments for no reason at all. You've lost the plot. This was a casual camp throwaway comment that I made, though actually it was entirely reasonable and factual. Totally factual. You live in the glorious world of Omaha, Nebraska, and that's wonderful for you. But I, even though I don't live in the States, I'm in contact with all of the states. You will be surprised how intimately I have gotten to know my American fruits from every single state, and I love my fruits from every single state, including Omaha, Nebraska. Which one's the state, Omaha or Nebraska? Nebraska, isn't it? Just because I don't live there, it doesn't mean that I'm not informed and that I'm not in the know. I've got eyes in my head and I've got ears on the side of my head, just here, and I've got a nose, I've got a snout to sniff out bullshit. You say you're very distressed by my little throwaway comment. Well, my dear, you need to see a shrink, you need to see some sort of professional pronto, and I say that with kindness. I say that with kindness, darling. I wish you well, but don't come into my home uninvited and darken my doorstep with this nonsense on stilts. Do you understand? Looking back to the arrival of the Trump family, it was rather charming, wasn't it? With the Prince and Princess of Wales representing the King and greeting the couple and leading them to their majesties. I think that's such a nice touch. So familiar, so cosy. The coat Catherine wore on this occasion was the Amelia Wickstead with ruby and diamond earrings and a Chanel calfskin bag. Mrs. Trump wore an ensemble by Christian Dior haute couture, and she plays with that aura of mystery she has, doesn't she, with the wide-brimmed hat, using it as a prop to enhance the mystery, playing on that inscrutable look of hers. She's a stylist, but I liked that look, actually. I thought it was rather chic. And Queen Camilla was gifted a vintage flower brooch of gold and diamond and ruby by America. Isn't that lovely? And the Queen placed it on her breast for beating the retreat. I thought it was a rather special-looking piece. And it was a tonic to see Catherine and Melania in tandem in Frogmore Gardens, mingling with members of the Scouts Squirrels. How lovely. Catherine wore olive green for this, olive green suede and chestnut brown cashmere, with a Ralph Lauren tweed skirt and garnet to the lomes. I thought it was sober, autumnal, and quite delicious. Later on, Melania also wore Ralph Lauren, a lamb suede jacket and ballet flats. And getting cosy in the Royal Library with the Queen, she took a tour wearing Louis Vuitton, a suit in caramel leather, and snakeskin pumpies by Manolo Blahnik. And the departure was gracious, full of affection and goodwill. And so it seems the special relationship with our naughty cousins is alive and well, which is rather reassuring, isn't it? Very nice. And so is ours, isn't it, my dear? Our special relationship. Can't say quite the same for the fruit basket, which is falling apart at the seams, but hopefully I'm sure we'll sort that out, won't we, my dear? So stay fruity and on royal duty. If you would like to treat me to an autumn dram, my tip jar is in the box, where it usually is. And ta-ra for now, my dears. Channel the royal spirit and toodle pip.